Hi, this is Misha, and we're back with my HK G36K pistol with folding Bostic arm brace and tail hook adapter on the end. And the one I've had a little longer, German HK G36E. With a straight stock, because you don't need to worry about braces when your barrel is freaking 19 inches before even counting the flash hider. Now, we've done a number of videos on these, but for what these cost and how not common they are, forgive us for doing another one. We just took an impromptu trip out to the close range, and that way we just shoot them side by side, see which one we kind of liked better. This one is configured with the standard length military barrel. This is basically a German service Bundeswehr gun. The only difference, this has the optional kind of cutie bipod, which not all of those would have. Standard kind of mid-generation handguards. This one has the export optic, the 1.5 with backup iron sights on top. Feeds from standard HK magazines. Kind of a standard ambi lower, standard stock that folds over and it clips to the side of the receiver for transport. Again, for more info, check out our other videos. So we wanted to shoot it, which we've already taken to the range a few times, against the K here, which we took to the range for the very first time. The core, the heart of this gun, is the same. Receiver, trigger pack, also feeds from standard mags. Has a shorter handguard. This is the 21st century type with heat shield inside. Has the shorter barrel, 12.5 inches, with the open 4-prong flash hider. No bipod, of course. And it has the more modern metal rail with folding and adjustable iron sights. And we have a little Doctor red dot on, which seemed quite good for kind of a CQB gun. You're probably not going to be shooting a 12.5 inch barrel 223 5.56 gun at terribly long ranges, and this is a quality German optic, so it seemed appropriate. And like I said, we have the Bostic brace on, which, very similar to a stock, also folds over and clips onto the side and even leaves your ejection port, so the gun could be fired with that folded over. So we took both out to see how they shot, how we liked them, and this is what we had. Alrighty, well, you saw them both being fired. First off, no malfunctions, no failures with anyone. Mags are easy to load. Okay, so which did we like better? The K or the E? Now, because of this all polymer construction, and because these are lightweight profile barrels, the weight difference is there, you can tell it, but it's really not even a full pound, maybe half to 3/4 of a pound. So this one is not significantly heavier. It is, of course, quite a bit longer, about half a foot longer because of the long barrel. So you'd think that would kind of soak up recoil. And it's not an unpleasant gun to shoot, but what kind of surprised us, the K really didn't have that much more felt recoil than the E, even though it is, like I said, somewhere 3/4 of a pound or so lighter and quite a bit shorter. Of course, we do have a different style of muzzle device, so that could very well be helping. Unfortunately, we kind of like the K a little more, and I say that because Jay and I were both hoping that we would hate it, so we wouldn't really want to keep both. But it was a lot of fun. It is, there is a little more recoil, but not to the unpleasant point. Although I can see going to a G36C where it might get there. So I don't know that I'd want to go too much smaller and lighter, because I could see it getting pretty flippy, because most of your mass is in this bolt group here, traveling back and forth. So the shorter your barrel is, the less mass you have out here, the more the gun wants to seesaw, teeter-totter. I will say these heat shield handguards did a great job. This never got warm to the touch, and since they pretty much cover all of the barrel, even when this was steaming hot here, because these are free floated and again have a heat shield, they never got warm. So that was nice. The Bostic brace was extremely comfortable and sturdy. I mean, it's exactly what you'd expect from Mr. Tom Bostic. His work is impeccable. These receivers that he put back together using originals also work fantastic. Nice smooth bolt. Everything is as tight as you'd expect on an original. In fact, they might even be a little stronger than original, because he adds a little bit of extra steel plating, steel reinforcement when he does his magic to them. This is one of those guns that's really just greater than the sum of its parts. It really is. The G36 is dated by today's standards. But let's not forget when it came out. We have a full video on the history and development, but HK originally was working very hard on the G11, the caseless rifle. Well, it didn't go anywhere for several reasons. So then they thought about the G41, which was basically a slightly updated HK33. The big updates were essentially that it could feed from AR-15 magazines, and that it had a forward assist button and a bolt hold open. But the Bundeswehr wasn't interested, so they started developing this as the HK50 as early as 92 into 93, with working prototypes by 94 and 95. That's when testing began, 95, 96. This went up primarily against the Steyr AUG, Steyr AUG, which would have been the A2 at that time. But the Bundeswehr really didn't want to bullpup. They adopted this gun here. And when it was adopted in 97, this really was a game changer, guys. Now, it wasn't even set out to be. This wasn't supposed to be a revolutionary gun. It was supposed to be an evolutionary step forward. At least that's how they referred to it. But what they did, they took the gas piston, the short stroke gas piston system of the AR-18, and they simplified and improved it. And they paired that with a polymer construction, a polymer chassis, which had several advantages. One, it made production faster and easier. Once you get your molds set up, molds are expensive, but then the per unit cost is very inexpensive. It also meant it was lighter weight, and that it didn't rust and corrode, really, because while the receiver has a trunnion that's metal, the outside bits of this gun are pretty much all polymer. You have your metal barrel here, but aside from it, pretty much all polymer. And the nice thing is, this was a very modular gun. To replace the barrels on these, you just need two tools. You basically need a barrel wrench to get to the nut, and then you need a vice block, a mandrel of sorts to hold the receiver properly. If you have those, these barrels come off very, very easily. So it's quick change in the sense that a unit armorer can do it. So you could take this E, pull the barrel, and you could make it into anything, a C or a K. Originally, another thing that these did, it was one of the first, not the first, the AUG actually is probably that, standard issue mass production military gun to come with an optic. Now in the German military they had what they called the dual optic. That was the similar carry handle chassis here, but we had a 3-power scope down here instead of a single. By the way, this scope is removable. And on top we had a small red dot, kind of like a modern RMR, or at least a prototypical version. Now by today's standards, this dual optic is big, heavy, and the battery life sucks. But by the standards in the 90s, it was a standard issue red dot and magnified optic. It even had some light sensing capability. It was pretty advanced. And the nice thing was, when it became dated, or for export, like this optic here, this is just held on with 3 screws. And yes, they did use Phillips head type screws instead of, flat or Allen. There's 3 here that bolt on. The front is a little longer than the back too. You take those off, and then this is just on a dovetail. You just slide it off, and you can slide on a rail or just straight up iron sights. HK has made tons of these over the years, so you can kind of pick the one you want. Likewise, this handguard is very modular, just one push pin, and it comes right off. And HK has made a ton of different handguards. Obviously today they're using railed, and they added a heat shield in 2000. So this handguard comes off extremely easily. This magwell too is just held on. It pivots here, and it's got a push pin back here. This is the one that takes G36 mags, rock and lock, but they do make an AR-15 version. Likewise, trigger packs on most HKs, they can be swapped out. This is the 3-position, safe semi-full, although full is permanently disabled, guys. But you could also, they just made what they sometimes call the FBI, where it was just safe semi, or they would do safe semi 2 round, safe semi 3 round, very configurable. And finally, the buttstock. This is the C stock. It's a little bit shorter. The standard, or the K stock, is just a teensy bit longer, skeletonized, very much inspired by the SIG SG550. They also make a more up-to-date one, which is a solid body that also has an adjustable length of pull. You typically see those on export guns like the G36K V. But anyway, so very modular, and that's allowed this to stay in service for over 20 years now. And yes, they are having trials to replace it, but they're not scheduled to even have a winner selected till next year, and it will not enter into production till at least 2020, which means the G36E and the G36K will remain in Bundeswehr service, at least in some capacity, for the next probably 5 to 10 years, if not longer. Reasonably successful design, considering HK kind of slapped this together using Bundeswehr requirements at the 11th hour after their first 2 suggestions were tossed out of hand. That's kind of neat. And so that's why I say this gun is kind of greater than the sum of its parts, and why so many of us seem to gush on about it, when realistically on paper it's just out of date. But what this did influence an entire new generation of guns. Look at guns that came after the G36. The polymer receiver, the modular barrel system, even the integrated optic and all that have become very standard. The Beretta ARX 160 comes to mind, but you can even point to guns like the CZ Bren 2 as having some influence from this gun. So it really kind of did that, and it also came out at a time when bullpups were still quite popular in Europe, and it proved that you didn't have to go bullpup to have a modern service rifle. So that was kind of nice. I think that's why a lot of us like it. Plus, there's just a lot of us that like to collect the unusual. or the historical. Let's be honest, politics aside, Germany's had a lot of innovations in small arms, and this is another one. And it does just shoot really well, and I can't explain why it's so fun to shoot, but it will put a smile on your face, I bet you. It's just fun. It's not heavy, it's accurate, and it's dead nuts reliable. I think this is why Atlantic has just recently introduced the T36, their own semi-auto version of a G36. Right now they have a C and a K, both pistol and rifle. Whereas my guns here are built from all German parts, with the receiver reworked by Tom Bostic, and these were imported by Michael's Machines, Michael Ott. The T36 is a wholly US made gun. It has a Bostic receiver, which I've been told are made by Chode now. Chode, whatever. Not a really fortunate name in today's society, if you ask me. And then most of the rest of the parts, if not all of them, come from GSG9. So this explains why they are under 3,000, and Michael Ott had to ask over 6,000 for these. German parts are expensive. Importing is expensive. But the receivers are both done by Tom Bostic. Just this was a re-weld of an original, and the T36 is a US made shell. And we will definitely feature a T36 on this channel eventually, I have no doubt. And so we'll do a comparison of it versus our German friends here. So stay tuned for that probably next year. So, the conclusion. Damn it, the K was a lot of fun to shoot, and it's kind of the iconic gun. So we kind of want to keep that. But the E is the hard one to find. It's a rarer gun. And it's the quintessential Bundeswehr gun. So I couldn't get rid of my good old E here. It's the one I've always wanted. So I've got a tough call to make over Christmas. But, you know, there's a little time. Well, if you still want to hear me ramble on more about the G36, check on our playlist. We have one for German guns. We also have another one dedicated specifically to HK. If you have any questions or comments, do post them below. We do our best to get to them quickly. As always, we sincerely appreciate you tuning in. And if you'd like to help support the channel so we can get out and shoot even more, do check the link to our Patreon page. This is Misha, and we will catch you next time.